Hello, entrepreneurs. Joe DeCharis, CPA extraordinaire, coming to you live from downtown Long Island, New York, for another amazing book launch with my friend and compañero, Elizabeth Shepard. How do you like that? I gave you a new name.
I'm not Elizabeth Shepard.
I
Susan
mean,
Shepard is awesome, but I'm Elizabeth
Eli-
Frederick.
Elizabeth Frederick. So I'm commingling our names here. Sorry about that.
So,
Actually, it's a compliment to you and Susan, because you're
uh,
both in my head. So
I appreciate that. I have to admit that I've learned a lot from Susan recently, actually. She has taught me a lot about how to get what you want. And one of the things that I wanted, Joe, was your book being published. Okay. One of the things that I wanted was the idea that all the stuff that you've written over the last like 45 years came together in this we keep calling it a manifesto, right? I called it the book for a long time, and what was
you
funny
were to
about
call it the Black Book, right?
the the black book for accounting and
The only
bookkeeping,
one
yeah.
that would not understand what that meant were attorneys, but yeah,
That's true. Well, because okay, so the black book is the legal dictionary, right? It is everything that every attorney reads, and it should be like it's the
the Bible.
Bible, I think. Yeah, it's like the
Bible.
Bible because what happens is every state and every federal, like the federal government, they all have different laws, right? And all the laws, in order for them to be applied, have to be defined. They can only define the words with the black book
That
because
must be a huge book.
it is a big book. It was like $500 this book, okay?
Oh God!
When
I mean,
I
is there a Kindle version?
I I believe I hope there's a Kindle version
I
now.
know there's a Kindle version of our book.
There is a Kindle version of The Secret Sauce to Accounting and Bookkeeping, not bookkeeping, accounting and tax preparation in the United States. All right. And this is where I believe that that title, it won for a reason. It's a lot better than the little, because it's not little,
In the
the
Black.
little, yeah, than the black book. But what was funny about it, or what, you know how you can read the Bible every night and you get a lesson from it? Well, I
Yeah,
have to admit that when you read your book, The Secret Sauce, you get a lesson from it. You can get a lesson from it every night. You can apply it to your accounting business. You can apply it to your own business. You can apply it to your own personal finances. All right. So I took it very, very seriously. And my brother made fun of me every night. All right. Because I would be done and it would be 11 or 12 o'clock at night and we'd be hanging out and talking for the day. And I'd still have my phone going reading the book. And he would go on about how awesome it was. In fact, he was like, "If you're missing the black book to accounting, you don't know what."
well, I really appreciate that because first of all, don't compare this book to the Bible.
No, I it's not a religious book at all.
It is spiritual. It is spiritual, and you taught me that because really the bookkeeping is the foundation of all businesses. And if there's no bookkeeping, there's no accounting, there's no taxes, the whole world would be total anarchy. And publishing this book wasn't my idea; it was all your idea. So I appreciate that. And I didn't look at it that way. I honestly didn't look at it that way because probably it's the same problem as entrepreneurs have. I was stuck in the minutia, I was stuck in the details. And well, I can't say you're a novice, you're a closet accountant. But I got to tell you, I bought 5 copies because I couldn't trust my family to actually buy them. It was $2.99 for the special version. So I said, let me buy them. I'll send it to my family with the threat of you have to give me a good review. Hey, Bonnie, buy my book, Bonnie. We need reviews so I can get #1 bestseller. And it's really not my book. It's really a compilation of what what our students have asked us, and really it started with my mom. My mom was 62 about 20 years ago. That's how long ago. It was 2 decades ago when I shocked her and I said, "How would you like to work with me? Not for me, but with me, as a bookkeeper." And she said, "Yeah, what are you, crazy? I live 2,000 miles away." And it was all about this RDP, remote desktop protocol, that I was accidentally introduced to, which eliminated the geographic boundaries for accountants. And the thought occurred to me that if I could have taught my mother how to do this, who really had very little bookkeeping experience, formal bookkeeping experience, that I could teach other people. And I created a course, and it worked. It worked. We were able to teach a bunch of people, and then the universe conspired to get us to put the book together again. Let's call it an updated version, so we could teach a whole new generation of accountants how to do U.S. style accounting and bookkeeping and tax preparation.
Well, Joe, I am so glad that you did that with Grace, because this is where the content that you had and what you used to make it so you were teaching her, and you taught this, you talked about how you talked about another course to, I think you put like an ad on Craigslist or something where, and then a whole bunch of people showed up. So the material itself, it's not like it was brand new, except we shined it. You made it brand new, right? Because this is where when we were teaching the class, and as we teach the class, you took the different chapters and you changed them.
Yeah,
The
we added some. We went back to where formal businesses actually start, which is at the state level, all the way up to, we take the entrepreneur's first idea to start a business, and we teach people how to capture those initial expenses, which a lot of people just overlook. We point out that as soon as somebody starts a business is when they could start deducting expenses, and all the way through to the tax return and everything in between. We go through the different situations that people come up with. And really, what we do at Bedrock with your help is we simplify everything, right?
that I think that's true. Yeah. A lot of times that's the goal of a lot of things, is to simplify them, is to make them easier. And that is also another thing I learned in law school. So you talk about the black book and defining everything, right? One of the things that was repeated to me over and over again was that people do not understand law. You have to make it simple. And if you don't make it simple, then nobody can read what they're signing, or the contracts that they're getting into, or the implications of the court cases that they are experiencing. And the same thing applies to taxes. There is an actual niche of law that's called tax law. And it's the same thing. You have to make taxes and you have to make accounting simplified for the average individual and for any individual, okay? Even if you're a brain surgeon, you need to make it so accounting is
Yeah,
simplified.
honestly, we've made this book because, like I said, it wasn't just me. We did it together. Uh, you helped edit it, basically. Uh, that it wasn't a book that it was based on what I want to learn. I said this is a book, and if you ever want to teach something, try writing a book, and explain something that like the back of your hand, and it's not that simple. It's not that simple to take all of that information. But let me just share one thing with you. You mentioned about uh, the law, and when you create contracts or wills or whatever, and people just sign them, right?
Mhm.
You should go through that and understand what you're signing, right? People just sign them, most people, and it's the same thing with tax returns. did you know that on the tax return it says under penalty of perjury? I attest that basically this is all true and correct, and I've examined what they just signed the return. But what I was going to say is we've actually made this book so simple that a brain surgeon and a rocket scientist can understand it.
Oh yeah. We put the age on Amazon as a 14-year-old, dude, because the reason for that is it should be accessible to everybody. It should be accessible to children who are starting businesses because in this day and age, there's lots of children who start businesses. All right. Families wind up starting businesses and they wind up having to apply these tax principles and these foundational ways that you can do business and do business in a way where you can make money and still make it so you're complying with the tax law, right? But you're also able to write off as much as you can and keep as much as you can out of it. There is definitely tax strategies that make it so the tax code doesn't take advantage of you, but instead you own the tax code. And by that, you can make it so people are talking in the chat. I'm so stoked. Okay, so I'm gonna have to read it. But this is where you can apply it and then it's like magic almost. When I see you do tax returns or when I see you engage with a new client, and it's not just you at this point, Joe, it's all of Team Bedrock. And Bedrock has now applied these principles and this system to the way we do business. And it makes it so it's relieving. It's relaxing. It is therapeutic. And doing this book was a spiritual journey, okay? Because it can connect you with your true purpose. If you really like accounting and bookkeeping and tax preparation and it speaks to you, because it spoke to over 100 students as we've been doing this.
Well, let's get something straight. If accounting and bookkeeping and taxes speaks to you, then you should be an accountant, tax preparer, or bookkeeper. Okay. The truth is that numbers scare people. I've learned this. And the reason why I said it's simple enough for a brain surgeon and a rocket scientist to understand it is because the smartest people don't pay attention to this. You know, you see them, they're doctors and they don't know anything about business. Now, if they applied themselves and said, let me read this simple book, they would get bigger tax write-offs. What they do is they just depend on their accountants and assume that everything is hunky-dory. And the truth is now, unfortunately, and you see this with our clients, they're getting work that's literally garbage. They're not doing accounting. And I want to call out all those accountants that are doing garbage work. They're just taking information that their clients give them from whatever, from QuickBooks Online, and they're just plopping it on a tax return. That's not accounting. This book is accounting, and it'll empower any entrepreneur to be able to ask their accountants the right questions. They don't ask the right questions, Elizabeth.
No, they don't ask the right questions. In fact, I don't think most people know the right questions to ask.
They don't. They
So
don't.
they just want to know a lot of times, am I getting a refund? Do I have to pay taxes? They will
What can I
oftentimes,
write off? What can I write off? Those are the wrong questions. And you know what my answer is to it? It's section 162. Anything that's ordinary and necessary. I know that's one of your favorite code sections, but it's basically it's the secret weapon that I've used against the IRS thousands of times because and it's almost like this is how they train auditors. They say, well, how do we know this is for business? And what's the answer?
it's based on what the business person
No, it's
does. Is it reasonable?
well, yeah, that's the truth. Is it reasonable and necessary? And so when the IRS says, how do we know this is for business? The answer is because my client said it was. We documented, we did everything by law. And the truth is the IRS doesn't make the laws. People don't realize that. They just administer the law, and it's according to how they want to process tax returns. And you know that we covered strange but true tax deductions that the IRS didn't like, and they brought the IRS to court, like the woman that wrote off cat food and vet bills. The IRS said, "Well, this isn't ordinary and necessary." And the IRS disagreed. I mean, the tax court disagreed with the IRS, and they said this is absolutely ordinary and necessary because she owned a junkyard and the cats kept the vermin away. So they sided with the taxpayer.
Now, Joe, you always mention a real reasonable tax deduction and the court finding that one real reasonable, right? Because lots of people, they have pets in their office. They're therapeutic pets. They kill the mice in.
They use them in their advertising. Look at the Gecko and the Geico ads. You don't think that Geico is writing that off?
Well, I think the Geico might be now AI. It might not be a real gecko, but I hope it is. I
Hey,
hope the
you're
Geico
saying that
gecko.
that little guy isn't real?
Well, he's at least a couple different geckos at this point. He's been on television since I was a little kid, and I'm not going to tell
Oh,
how old I am, but I don't think geckos live that long.
okay, but the truth is, we do have clients that actually have pets, and I'll tell you a good one. I had a client that took in a stray. He had a warehouse in a not so great neighborhood. They had very expensive equipment in the warehouse, and the dog stayed at the warehouse, and he was a watchdog. So we wrote off the dog food, the vet bills, and that was totally legit.
No, well, that's a good thing to take that legit write-off, right? But what about the gas station that gave away a free beer every time
Well,
you got to fill up? And that was used as a marketing and
well,
advertising expense and
yeah,
was legit, people, okay?
yeah. Well, when I think about that, I'm like, that's really like that's out of the. They could have thought of something else to give their customers, because what were they saying? Oh, fill up and we'll give you a six pack, and then you can get arrested for drunk driving. But what happened was that they went to tax court, and the tax court said this is a definitely a tax write-off.
Mhm.
So, the point is that there are, tax write-offs and things that aren't tax write-offs. And we don't even have to get into that. But as long as, and especially now people are using their homes for business. But here's the point, Elizabeth. One question that I've never been asked is, when does the business start? When can I start writing stuff off? And it's as soon as you take action. And another thing is, people think they can't start writing off expenses until they start making money. That's not true either.
If that were the case, oh my goodness, some businesses would never get off the ground. A lot of businesses actually start with a deficit as opposed to a profit.
Well, sometimes businesses start with clients. So for instance, you can have a following, you can be a marketing consultant and leave your firm and bring clients with you. That doesn't happen very often. Okay. So when it does, you can consider yourself lucky that you have revenue on day one. But the truth is, tens of millions of people start businesses and never earn a penny. They never do. They never send one invoice out. They never make a bank deposit. But what they're doing is they're losing valuable tax write-offs. So even though they don't have revenue, those are still tax write-offs, and they missed the boat on them.
Now, is there a time where they have to start making money in order for their business to continue?
So this is another thing that's totally misunderstood. The IRS has a I don't even know if it's a rule that says the hobby loss rule. And what they say is, if you're a sole proprietor, okay, you see the IRS also discriminates between sole proprietors and entities. And what they do is they say if you're a sole proprietor and you don't make a profit in 3 out of the 5 years, if you show, they can impose what they can say this isn't a business, it's a hobby. Okay. Uh, it's arbitrary. They don't do it all the time. I've seen people have losses for years, and then other times they impose it. So they're arbitrary. But the truth is, if I don't care if you're collecting coins, if you're doing it for a profit, it's a business. The IRS could just say, oh, this is a hobby. And we'll do it the opposite. Now, what they're doing is they're making people that actually have hobbies, okay,
Into businesses.
this whole 1099 thing. They made my mother so she's a business. She makes crafts. She just happens to have an Etsy store so she could sell them. And, her biggest customer is me. So I buy more than $600 a year because it's simple. She does custom made stuff. I mean, it's really nice. I buy it for Christmas gifts, for birthday gifts. I think you've bought it and given away, in our mastermind.
I bought it and I've used a lot of this stuff. Her masks were so comfortable when she
Oh
had them.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I loved them, to be
So
honest.
what happens now? She's going to get a 1099, and I said, "Oh no, we're not. We're going to apply the same principles that are in my book. We're going to make her an S corp." Well, we don't make her into an S corp. We make the business into an S corp. But
Well,
why?
entities become their own little life. That's why, Joe. That's why you would do that. Entities become like they're like a whole little person, but it's an entity as opposed to a person. It separates you
It's
from
a
the business.
separate entity. So this is where the discrimination comes. Because if she was a sole proprietor, her business is her. It's merged with her personal return. She hasn't had to file a personal income tax return in probably, I don't even remember the last time. She probably doesn't remember. Okay. She has no taxable income. She lives with my sister. She's comfortable. She's taken care of, and she does this. It's really a hobby. But as an S corp, it's separate from her personal tax return. Okay, and the IRS doesn't impose what they call a hobby loss rule to corporations. Why is that? That's not fair. That's one of the things that we cover in here. That's why we recommend every business become an S corp, because it opens up other tax strategies that sole proprietors don't have. And that was really the crux for our course. We want to teach everybody, listen, there's something wrong out there because there's 28 million sole proprietors that don't know this stuff. They're told, Elizabeth, that being a corporation is too complicated. It's on the IRS site. They don't say it's too complicated. They encourage staying as a sole proprietor. And that's just not right. And then they say it's going to cost more money. Well, if you're going to be in business, it's like saying, well, I'm not going to drive because it costs too much for car insurance. That doesn't make sense. And the truth is that it's not really that more complicated, and it's not really that much more expensive when you compare what it cost you to be a sole proprietor.
In the long term, it does cost you more to be a sole proprietor, tax wise, your liability, if something could go wrong. There's a lot of a lot of disadvantages to being a sole proprietor when you're first starting, sure, and you don't know what you're doing, okay. But then once you're serious about your business, and this is where the IRS, this is I commend the IRS and I commend the whole idea that they're giving these 1099s where it's $600 or more, and it's because they are taking people who are making money, those unconscious uh success stories, right? They don't really even know that they have a successful business, but they do if they're making money. We talked about just how a lot of times they start about the deficits, but there's a fair amount of people who are successfully making money in a business, and they're tapping them on their shoulder. It's like being knighted, right? And saying, "Hey, you actually need to start a business, okay? You need to have the benefit of having the protection of being an entity. You need to make it so if your unconscious success all of a sudden is fluctuating in a way that isn't benefiting you, or not isn't benefiting you, but you're not doing it all the time. Well, we're not going to just call it a hobby. We're actually going to respect what you're doing, and we're going to respect your business. All right? You need to form it as a business, or if you're going to continue and not be aware of what you are doing, then by all means, please pay the self-employment tax. Okay? Because we need that.
So, this is why we love you. This is why we're like yin and yang, because I don't look at it as tapping them on the shoulder and saying, "Oh, you've been knighted. We're so happy." The truth is that, for whatever reason, and we could get into that, they don't want people to be corporations. S corps were actually created in 1958 to bridge the gap between sole proprietors and corporations, because corporations were owned by rich people.
Corporations started because of the railroad. Did you know why that like those entities just in general started because they wanted to make it so the railroad could make the most amount of money and not have to actually pay for the mistakes or liabilities. They didn't have personal liabilities for the people that died making them. Like they wanted instead
But that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But
whole nother rabbit hole. But
yeah,
this
that is pretty interesting. But the truth is that, yeah, corporations were more complicated. You had to have a board of directors. Basically, you needed an accountant and an attorney. So what did that do? That stopped. That became a barrier for small businesses, because a lot of them were working on a shoestring. That's how I mean, even today they start, the entrepreneurs are insane. We're crazy. We do things that defy logic. We start businesses with no money, we go bankrupt, and then we start all over again. Walt Disney went bankrupt 3 times, I think. Okay, and we just don't give up. But what happens is, and this is what the whole political climate was back in 1958, was they said, "Listen, we've had enough of this. We gotta level the playing field." Another thing with a corporation was there was double taxation. So what that is, who could afford to pay taxes twice, let alone once? That's the way they framed it. So people with money could open up a corporation. What that did was that opened up all kinds of tax strategies for them on how much to pay themselves, how to pay themselves. It gave them legal protection, like you said, with the railroads. They enjoyed all of these benefits. So what double taxation meant was, okay, if the corporation made money and they took out a salary, there was money left over. It's called net profit. Well, the only way for the corporation, well, one of the ways, and there's plenty of other ways to compensate the owner, and that's in the book. Uh, if the corporation made enough money, they would pay dividends. So the corporation doesn't get a tax write-off for the dividends, and the owner has to pay personal income tax on the dividends. Well, who could afford that? Those are investors.
is
Okay.
that why when I buy some stocks, all of a sudden I'm getting 8 cents in dividends when I have like 2 or 3 shares?
Yeah, you're getting, so these are large public companies, and so public companies, they're big. Actually, public companies don't have to be big, but that's a whole nother. To be on the stock exchange, or the what do you call it? The other big one. There's a bunch of stuff. There's international exchanges. You have to qualify to be on those exchanges. On the New York Stock Exchange, those are the biggest companies in the world. Okay. But you could be a public company and be very, very small on smaller exchanges.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
But the
There's thousands and thousands of companies that are on different exchanges,
oh,
and
there's
they have
really
they have a different amount of stocks themselves, right? And this is where an S corp in particular, they can't have more than 100
well this
shareholders
is
and stuff.
where
Like there's technicalities with them.
well, yeah, this is where they said, okay, S corps in 1958, they said we're going to level the playing field, eliminate this double taxation, make it easier for these sole proprietors to incorporate and have one one tax. The corporation is still going to be separate from the individual. And here's another thing: corporations, entities get more respect than sole proprietors. Why? Because the business world says, well, they must be successful if they've become a corporation. But this became another problem when they came up with LLCs, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
You want to know why?
LLC. So okay, I have to
And I
admit,
know you wrote a book on LLCs, and it
how to
wasn't wrong. It was there are very, very good instances when LLCs are can be used.
like real estate. Real estate is a great is a great time to be an LLC. But even within the real estate business, if you're doing real estate and then you have a business on itself, it's still good to have an S corp and then to have the LLC and make them dance together. But that's a whole other strategy. However, I did at one point think that an LLC was just the bee's knees of doing business. Okay. That's why I wrote the book. I was like, oh, that's easy. I also thought to myself, oh, I don't want to have to think about the numbers or the double taxation or anything like that, right? And then I started listening to Joe because I knew that there was something off. I knew that there was something off about the self employment tax. I knew there was something off about possibilities of double taxation in the corporation. I wanted a solution. I wanted a better one because I was reading the fine print of the tax code. And do you know that you made it so it came to light? The solution was actually there. It was actually what I was reading right in front of me, except it was so encoded within the fine print of everything. It
It's
was
actually for somebody like me, because CPAs know this. And you see, that's the issue. Growing up in the CPA firms, we didn't have sole proprietors. If we had them, we told them to become S corps or C corps, depending on the tax situation. Okay. When I started doing research, because I found our biggest best client was the smallest client, my friend Linda, who I had made an S corp 25 years ago. And I said, oh, we want more Lindas as clients. And I started doing research, and the SBA has all the data, and I've seen this so many times because I've been there. And they said there's at the time there was 28 million businesses. Now it's grown as 30 million businesses. And today, out of 30 million businesses, 28 million are what they call non-employer firms. So I've seen that that phrase, and I said, what do they mean non-employer firms? I assumed that they were S corps, and they just didn't have any employees like most of our clients. No, non-employer meant sole proprietorship. I was shocked. They said, I've had my head in the sand all these decades. There's something wrong with this. First of all, why don't they just call them sole proprietors? Right? Because
it's
it's
all about the terminology, Joe, and the
well, what
ability to
they did
define
is
it. And you make
they
a broad
fool
term that can then
they,
be
they fool people like me into not seeing the truth. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of smoke and mirrors, and that's That's another
Well,
book
this is
that.
where it's hard to read the tax code, okay? It's hard to read these
So
things, and that's why we have to make it simple. And this book, Joe, is not just about S corps. A lot of times we'll talk a lot about S corps, right? You have another book. It's called the Little Itty Bitty Book about S corps, and that's a fantastic book too, right? My book on LLCs, it's a good book. You want to be an LLC, you can incorporate in New York. It'll tell you how to do it. Joe's book on being an S corp, you read that one. It's a good book. It'll teach you all about S corps. But the secret sauce to accounting and tax preparation in the United States. Now, that book is on a firm foundation, and the firm foundation is not just the entity you choose. It is a firm foundation on books and records and how to apply all the different tips and tricks that you as a CPA have learned over the last 45 years. There is a lot of benefits you get from such experience. Okay?
what are we,
That's a legacy, all right? And that's a legacy that's left with the students who read it and with the other book readers who are going to purchase it and read it. And you know what? You can also become a certified Bedrock business builder because this book is also the foundation of that program. It is our textbook, okay? Now within the certification program, do we do other things? Do we actually take this information and apply it to a mock client? And do we apply it to actual books and records? And do we make students file or not file all the way, but they do a tax return based off of the books and records and the principles we're applying? Absolutely. That's part of the whole certification course. But this book is the textbook. And it's not going to be it's not a $500 black book, okay? But I'm serious when I say that it can be treated as if it's a $500 book. It can be worth that much because Joe, we are taking those terms, those principles, these complex ideas, we are simplifying them and defining them in a way to make it so they are understandable. And then the other beautiful thing about this book, and we haven't talked about this much, is that there are links to these definitions and they go back to the IRS code or they go back to the IRS site. We are actually going to the source of where we are getting the information, and it's not a third party. All right. We decided that the government, yes, the government, I know we're always against, we like to be against them, but we're not. We
oh,
want to
we're
be in
not against the
compliance.
government.
There
We need the government. Okay.
See, that's
We
that's
just
a
like,
song to my ear, Joe. You just
oh,
saying we're not against the government. Woohoo. Mark it down in history, everybody. Joe just said we're not against the government. You can go back to his other lives where he's strapping his suspenders and he'll be saying, "That's it. We're in a war." We
well,
are.
sometimes it feels like we're in a war because entrepreneurs, they got when we start out, we have the cards are stacked against us. First of all, life is hard enough, and if you want to make it more complicated, go into business. Now you add to that all of a sudden you got to pay payroll taxes, sales tax. It becomes a whole nother level of insanity, complexity. And most people that aren't like us don't like numbers. They're afraid of them because they don't understand them. And what I'm most proud of is I believe that this book will empower people. It's going to make all of those complicated ideas and concepts simple. And more importantly, Elizabeth, they're going to know what to ask their accountants. Because the number one thing that I've never been asked, I already shared, they never asked me when does the business start. The other thing they never asked me is how do you actually get these numbers and put them on the tax return? I mean, you see our team Bedrock where we're getting, hundreds of statements, we're reconciling, we're categorizing, we're taking Amazon transactions, Venmo, Zelle, all of these crazy things that we do to, in, consummate business and getting it on a tax return. They never asked me how do we do that. This book will explain step by step, and it's almost like we reverse engineered it. So we go from the book to what might seem, which is complicated text at the IRS level, but you can reference back and say, oh, this is what they mean.
Oh yeah. That is a beautiful thing, being able to reference it and being able to dive deeper, because that's the thing, right? You want something simple. You want something that you can read and you can understand it, but then you also want the ability to check back to the source. You want to be able to trust what you're reading. And that's trust is one of the core principles within Bedrock Business Builders. So it makes sense that when we're saying things, when we're talking about things, of course, we're going to look them up and we're going to make sure that what we are saying, what we are doing, it is reliable, it's trustworthy. It's to help people and not to hinder them. And it is also, we want to keep accountants accountable. Okay, so if everybody can understand this, then that is how this business or this industry can be accountable. Because let's be real, we talk about how AI or how a lot of industries are innovating, right? QuickBooks, Wave, Intuit, all of these resources or these tools to help you with your accounting, these programs that will go in and they will automatically try to categorize or implement rules on your books and create a P&L based on
Yeah,
what.
that's really scary. That's one of that. So when QuickBooks started, it totally disrupted the accounting industry, not in a good way. People started relying on the computer to actually become uh, their accounting system, and that's not an accounting system. Our book explains what an accounting system is. QuickBooks is just a tool. Okay. And Intuit perpetrated the biggest lie that entrepreneurs have ever been told when they said you could save money by doing your own books. That's like me trying to fix my own car. Okay. That's like me if I open a restaurant and I'm going to be the cook. It's not going to work out too well. But another thing that we do in this book is we confront the whole LLC confusion, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people realize now, because the internet has all of this information, and you do a search, and everything you search about being a small business, they point you to being an LLC. So you can easily become an LLC. You just go online, and there's plenty of companies that will set you up as an LLC, and they're order takers. They're not giving you advice. But like I
No, they
said,
actually can't give you advice. All right. Like a lot of these that they are just, so all of those websites that are helping you file, that's all they're doing. They are an electronic filer. All right. They are not giving you legal advice. They're not giving you financial advice. They're just saying, hey, you think it's cool to be an LLC? We think it's cool too. So
well,
file.
actually, some of them, and I'm not going to name them, but some of them do give you legal advice, and they try to steer you towards what they believe is the right entity. And what people don't realize is LLCs are not recognized by the IRS. So if you're a single member LLC, you're still taxed as a sole proprietor. And here's the shocker, what people really don't know. When you're a sole proprietor, your net profit is subject to 15.3% in self-employment tax. So when these sole proprietors file the tax returns, most of them, they don't realize why their taxes are so high. Even if they're in the 15% tax bracket, they could be in the lowest tax bracket. They could actually be in the poverty level, under the poverty level, and still have to pay that 15.3% in self employment tax. And that is a killer. That is a killer. So if somebody makes $100,000 and they're paying 15,000 in self-employment tax, that's enough to make or break a business. Especially if you live in, where we live, where it's a high cost of living. You, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money. Make it 50,000.
Joe, do you know what one of the things I just heard the other night? There are renters out there right now that are charging $2,000 a month in rent, and they want you to show income of $100,000 a year and more in order to even sign for these apartments. So this is where how you organize your business, how you're paying taxes, how you're structuring your income or how you're reporting your income, it's financial planning. How you choose your entity, it's financial planning, all right? The accountant that you work with, it matters. It shouldn't be the last thing that you think of in your business. You shouldn't think to yourself, "Oh, I'll get an accountant once I have money. Oh, I'll get an accountant once it matters." No, it matters right at the onset of things. And if anything, the secret sauce shows you the importance of an accountant and shows you how there is a fair amount of things that an accountant does that you really don't want to have to worry about on a daily basis either. So you might as well invest in the ability to actually make more money or to structure yourself so you'll have more money. And it's it makes it so financials are easy to swallow. It's called the secret sauce for a reason, right? It is it
It's
is
actually not a secret.
yeah,
It's
it's
not
not
now anyway.
well,
And
come
so,
on. Is McDonald's secret sauce really a secret or is it
well, the
mayonnaise, ketchup?
Coca-Cola, the formula for Coca-Cola is actually a secret, but that's a whole nother story. Yeah. Uh, but here's the thing, Elizabeth. What we found out is most of these sole proprietors don't hire accountants. And you know, one of my favorite people in the world, Larry Bratton, is an extremely successful entrepreneur, won all kinds of awards, including the Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. He tells people if you can't afford an accountant when you start out, then don't start your business. Now, it's easy for him to say because he's overcome that, and he started as a bookkeeper at a flea bag hotel. Think about that. He's got a $250 million hotel empire, and he started with nothing as a bookkeeper. What a surprise! So and then you hear, you know, successful people, they all say you got to know your numbers. Well, here's the thing. Sole proprietors don't hire accountants because we're expensive. So if you're starting out on a shoestring, that's why I could understand why they say, "Oh, I'll hire an accountant when I start making money." Well, we eliminated the financial barriers, both with Bedrock Business Builders. We made having an accountant affordable. In fact, it's less than what people spend on coffee every month. And with this book, for right now, you could get this book on Kindle for $2.99.
If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it for free. All right. But I'll tell you, if you have Kindle Unlimited and you get an author's book, okay, you actually want them to get paid for it, scroll through that book and read through all the pages because then they're paid via how many pages you scroll. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably
Release.
read the book. How long is it? You know, I've read books on Kindle and it says this will take you 30 hours. This will take. Forget about Atlas Shrugged. They probably put down this will take you a month if you just read this 24 hours. I think this book is like 3 or 4 hours. I have to check it. So it's not like the Black Book.
No, it isn't. And the only reason why I would spend so many hours reading it was because this is where it was necessary to prepare for class. It was necessary to go over it. The process of publishing a book is it's spiritual, okay? It is arduous. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of eyes on a book, and it wasn't just me who was reading it, right? It was Joe writing it. I was reading it. We had a
Oh,
TA,
we had
Glenn.
you
Glenn, he was reading
Glenn
it.
reading it before we let the students read it.
Kareen was reading it. Janine was putting it together, and Kareen was putting it in separate PDFs, like the way we sparsed out the book and then brought it back together, and how we had all the students read it. And not only did they read it, they read it, they made comments on it, they gave us insights about it. They told us the things that they wanted to change, or that things that they wanted to go more in depth with, or the things that they wanted to learn next after they read the first chapter. Because here's a secret. We're talking about the secret sauce. Here's a secret in the process of making this book was that each week, as we were doing this 13-week course, don't you know, Joe was only about 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks ahead of everybody while we were creating this book because it was in the moment. That's one of the best ways to create a book is to make it so as you're doing it, you are making it and you're tailoring it to the reader. And the only way to tailor it to the reader is to actually have a bunch of readers with you, egging you on and
And we
telling you,
were looking for feedback. Feedback.
mhm,
What else what's the next step? What, because like I could go through it and just one of the hardest things I ever did was put what I taught my mother into writing and then try to teach it to people. Because I said, I know this, but I don't know how to explain it to a fifth grader. And that really, so like I said, if you want to learn something, try to teach it to somebody. Teachers learn more than the students. And the students gave me the content. They said, this is what we want to learn. And what's really rewarding is most of them, because you could teach 50 people and you're only going to have a certain percentage graduate. Most of them got certified. And the only way they got certified is if they actually finished the project, which meant doing a live, complicated client from start to finish, do the personal and business tax returns, and they all did it. They all did it, and guess what? A lot of them are now landing tax positions and accounting positions. And
yeah.
I don't think it was so much the content and the teaching, but it was the confidence that they got. They were like, you know what? Yeah, I this became simple. And they know that, and you gave them the secret words, the secret. If somebody asks them something that they don't know, what do they say, Elizabeth?
Joe, I'll get back to you.
And that's the truth. Nobody knows everything, but you can know the basics, and that's what this book does. It takes what people are afraid. It's like the boogeyman. Everybody's afraid of the boogeyman, and then you find out that the boogeyman's in your head. And we take the boogeyman and we put him out there, and the boogeyman's actually a nice guy. He's not a mean guy. It's like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
He's actually somebody who might invest in your business if you're able to structure your books and records the right way. All right. If you can
Yeah.
apply these principles, then maybe the boogeyman is someone who's going to help you. And this is where this book and what we've been doing with the certification course, what we've been doing within Bedrock Business Builders, what we have been doing with solo and small businesses is, and just individuals in general, is it is a matter of knowing that you're not alone. All right. I thought I was weird that I liked tax law. I thought it was strange that I was like compelled to read these things. And then all of a sudden, I met Joe and I didn't seem so strange. And then we got more people in Bedrock and I felt like I had friends. And then we got more people in the certification course and I was like, oh man, this is like a huge gang.
Well,
And
listen, there you do. Okay, so you read the tax code in your spare time. That I'm
it's
not
a weird
saying that it's not normal. I mean, but you're brilliant, and you see this stuff, and thank you for that, because you definitely inspired me. You encouraged me to do this. This wasn't my idea. I didn't wake up one day and say, "Oh, let's do a course and then we'll turn it into a book." Things don't always happen that way. It happens organically. Okay, and that's why I say it's like a spiritual exercise where it just happened, right?
That is correct. It just happened. Within business, it's the micro actions that you take. It's the little things that move you along inch by inch every day to get you to your big picture. A lot of times we have a big picture, right? I have a big picture. I want to ring that stock exchange bell. But how am I going to get there? Did I know that it was going to be by working with Bedrock Business Builders? Not at the onset of it. Do I know that it's because we're publishing this book? Not at the onset, but it's these little micro actions. I don't know how to ring the stock exchange bell unless I really go dive deep and figure out, well, how do businesses do that? How do they structure themselves to make it so they can make that much money? How do they structure themselves so they have shares and they have investors and they're actually running in compliance with the SEC and the IRS and the you
We
need to know
see
all those
it
things.
does seem it is overwhelming until you reverse engineer it and you see that Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were literally in Steve Jobs' parents' garage, soldering uh, uh, computer boards.
Mhm.
Bill Gates was a computer geek, and he was a programmer. They didn't start ringing the bell.
No, the origin stories of everybody are very interesting
They
from the
all
beginning.
started, most of them, okay? Most of them. Some people are seasoned entrepreneurs, they're investors, they can go in, and actually they call them angel investors, right? They take somebody like Steve Jobs because the really the spoke that was missing was the financial guy. They all needed the financial guy, right? Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak really didn't know anything about business. So they brought in the financial guy and he filled in all the gaps. And so it's possible for anybody. Not everybody has to ring the bell in the stock exchange, but right now, when I started in business, the American dream was, I thought the American dream was to be McDonald's. So today, it's all about lifestyle. It's about cutting the employee uh, chains, the ball and chain, and saying, I want to be free. And it's okay to be an employee. There's nothing, we need employees, we need people at work.
In
But
fact, when you own your own business, you should be an employee, okay? Like, there's a time where all of a sudden you make enough money, you gotta be an employee besides just the owner.
but listen, we've been on this for way too long. Not too long. We can go on forever. But let's just say this is our story. We're sticking with it, and it's not the end of the story. The story's still going.
It's
I
definitely to
encourage
be continued, okay? This is where we're launching this book. This is the first day of the launch, everybody. Woot woot, help us get to number 1. Buy the book. It's $2.99 is Kindle. You're gonna see that it's also gonna launch in paperback version. And I got a secret surprise for Joe, but I ain't saying it yet, right? This is where it's gonna be to be continued, okay? You're gonna be part of this journey with us. It is not ending, it is just beginning. And we've got a lot going on at Bedrock Business Builders. So if you want to check out more of what we're doing, go to the Mastermind on Fridays, 11:30 to 1. That's Mastermind with Joe DeChara. Okay. We have a lot of fun in there because it's all about fun and bookkeeping and finance if you're me anyway, okay? So let's keep the fun real. And then we've got workshops that we do once a month. I think most of the time it's the third Tuesday, but make sure you check because we've got it listed in the group of Bedrock Business Builders. We do client meetings, we do one-on-ones. You can always go to timewithjoe.com, okay? Book a call with him. You could go timewithelizabeth.com and book a call with me. I stole that from Joe. Joe got it from a different marketer who, you know what? It made it so now we've got time with Corrine, time with Luz, time with Sydney, all throughout the business. It's a bedrock I don't know, a bedrock signature. I'm not sure what to do with that, but it's a marketing technique and it's working. So I hope y'all make meetings with us, buy the book, leave reviews, tell us can we do something better? Tell us what should the secret sauce of
us what
accounting and
you
tax
want.
preparation series 2 should be, okay? Because we don't have to just have one sauce. We could have multiple sauces in this book series. So
Yes.
that is our story, and we're sticking to it, Joe. I've had a
All
lot of fun today. Thank you for having me on
right.
with
Good
you.
way to start Today's Monday, right?
Happy Monday, Joe. Woot woot.
All right, over and out. God bless. Thank you for joining us. And we will be back again with our next book.